And then you got up off the couch and you went to bed, and you said that was around midnight.
Midnight.
And nothing was unusual at that point.
So
Everything seemed okay.
there's actually a piece of, so to make something very crystal clear, me and the mom were on the phone at 9:43 or 9:46 in the evening. We stayed on the phone for quite some time.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Now, do you notice how when she asked the question, that is from the YouTube channel Duchess, I'll put a link to it in the description. Do you notice how when she asks the mother, Katie, did you notice anything unusual when you got up off the couch and went to bed at midnight? He actually cuts her off.
And nothing was unusual at that point. Everything seemed okay.
There's actually a piece of,
Now, I wonder what she would have said if she was allowed to answer the question. This interview that you've heard a piece out of was the first statement that the stepdad, Chris Proudfoot, and the biological mother, Katie Proudfoot, made after Sebastian Rogers disappeared. It was made on Monday, March the 4th, exactly a week after Sebastian disappeared. And what they did was they appeared without actually appearing, without actually showing their faces, on the YouTube channel Duchess. What's interesting about this non-appearance appearance is that Chris basically takes the narrative lead. He does it several times, even though he wasn't actually there. He tells you what quote-unquote mom was doing. He tells you at what time things happened. His designation of the mom and the mother seems to be a sly way of basically shifting the blame her way, to say the mother did this, the mom did that. You know, that the mother role is actually the key role here. And they don't seem to be in this together. He doesn't seem to talk to her or comfort her. It's not so much we this or we that, it's the mom this and the mom that. This tells you something perhaps about the dynamic, I think, in the Proudfoot home, that he's in charge, he's in control, but also that Katie defers to him. The second aspect worth mentioning is that when Katie is heard, she sounds emotional here. This is a mismatch to how she sounded and how she appeared 2 weeks later on Monday, March 18th on Chronicles of Olivia. In this analysis, we're going to look at a couple of statements that he makes and a couple of additional observations. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Welcome to the couple of hundred of you who have subscribed. If you're enjoying this analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So another aspect worth mentioning is that both Sebastian's parents work in construction in some way. I mean, his guardians, the stepdad and the biological mother. Now, it's hard to shake off the fact that Fotis Doulos worked in construction along with Michelle Troconis. Don Wells, the father of Summer Wells, also from Tennessee. Summer is actually still missing. Don Wells also worked in construction. Barry Morphew was not exactly a construction worker, but landscaping is very similar. You know, it's often part of the work that goes into construction sites. Lacey Peterson's mom worked in realty. Robert Durst, construction. John Ramsey, John Bonet's father, was sort of remodeling the Ramsey home off and on before she died. Chris Watts, an oil worker, also worked in an industry not so different from construction. It tends to radically alter, penetrate, and extract from the landscape. And you might say this is reaching, but the point is the construction industry, although it involves building, it also involves a kind of endless psychological violence. There's a destruction that's part of construction. There's breaking the earth, altering materials, destroying the original substrate, totally changing the underlying environment. If you've ever been near a construction site, you've heard the deafening sounds of rocks and soil and hammering, all of this sort of irrevocable altering of materials to suit men's whims. Now, you may laugh at this, but the psychology behind it is turning the earth itself basically into a disposable commodity while imposing oneself on it. But the part I want to briefly focus on here are some of these stepdad statements. And of course, these are all from the YouTube channel, The Duchess. The first statement he makes is, "We stayed on the phone for quite some time."
We stayed on the phone for quite some time. The call logs have been verified by all the police departments,
Now, what this may indicate is that the stepdad has an alibi. He was on the phone and he was somewhere else. Now, I can't help thinking about Chris Watts being on a very long phone call on the night that Shanann died and hours before the children were killed. In other words, what we find out through this information is that immediately preceding whatever happened to Sebastian, Katie and Chris had a long conversation. Suppose you could say that Katie may have been distracted by this conversation when something may have happened to Sebastian. Another thing to consider is, what was this conversation about? If Sebastian had overheard any part of it with any complaints expressed about him. Also, why didn't Chris come home that weekend? If they had a very long conversation over the phone, could he not have come home? Then he also says this.
To go wake her son up, get him ready for school. And now we have a worried mom who can't find her son in the house.
The first time does he say our son or her son? A moment later he says clearly, Mom can't find her son in the house. He refers to Sebastian as her son, not our son. This is very important. Had he accepted the parental role over Sebastian? And had he, Chris Proudfoot, had he accepted it cheerfully? If so, why is he constantly not home for most of February? From Katie's perspective, had Chris accepted Sebastian, her son, as part of their new family? What do you think?
I made the phone call and reported it to the sheriff's department because that's what we're supposed to do.
This is such a strange statement. Do you call 911 because it's an emergency, because you want help, because you want the authorities to assist you? Or did they even want outside help? Or did they call 911 because it was simply expected of them? That's what it sounds like. Why didn't the boy's mother call 911? Again, here the stepdad takes the lead, takes the leading role, and controls the narrative. What are law enforcement going to want to do? They're going to want to call and speak to her. So why doesn't she call them?
He doesn't have a social media.
Katie sounds upset when she says this. It may be unfair to judge because parents have different rules for their children, but it may indicate to what extent 15-year-old Sebastian wasn't like other children and thus needed additional looking after. It may also have been a bone of contention. Maybe he wanted social media. Maybe his friends had social media and he didn't.
For the record, I am a very strict parent.
Chris goes on to say, he does not have social media, not in our household. He does not online game. I mean, I'm pretty strict. Well, I must say that prohibition on online gaming is pretty strict. This is quite an ironic statement to make, given both of Sebastian's parents are essentially appealing to social media for help at this stage. This is definitely an area on paper that is worth looking at. Can one be strict with a high-functioning autistic child? Should one be strict? Does Chris seem like the right dad figure for the role? Was he the right dad figure for the role? Does Sebastian need strict or sensitive or a bit of both? When the Duchess channel asked Katie what she would want to say to Sebastian if he were listening, her anguished answer to me sounded raw and real. Again, if you want to listen to that, I'll put a link in the description. Chris also intones at one point, this boy has a large family. This boy, not our boy. Elsewhere he refers to him as a young man. We're also told that Sebastian has no concept of what money is, which gives one, again, a sense of the degree of difficulty involved in trying to raise him and look after him. I'm not going to take it further than that. In the next analysis, we'll examine the merits of the accidental theory. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.